All right, let's jump right into today's explainer and unpack the high-stakes, fast-moving world of water damage in North Kansas City. If you own property around here, you already know water isn't just some minor inconvenience. It is a very real, very expensive structural threat. So today, we're taking the complex guidelines of professional restoration and transforming them into a complete zero-to-hero blueprint for surviving a water crisis. So, first things first, we really have to ask a foundational question. What makes this specific region so incredibly vulnerable to devastating water intrusion? Why does every single spring storm or winter deep freeze feel like a rolling property crisis just waiting to happen? To figure that out, we're going to map out this whole survival guide. We'll look at 1, North Kansas City's water risks, 2, the anatomy of water damage, 3, the critical 48-hour window, 4, the science of restoration, and finally, 5, navigating insurance and recovery. Kicking things off with Section 1, North Kansas City's water risks, geography and aging infrastructure. Honestly, our local environment practically sets the stage for a crisis before a single drop of rain even falls. Think about where we are. We're literally sitting at the confluence of the Missouri River and multiple tributaries. You combine that floodplain with our poorly draining clay soil, and water just persistently pools right around foundations. Add in the fact that we've got all these pre-1980s homes lacking modern waterproofing, older plumbing that hates our winter freeze-thaw cycles, and storm sewers that easily back up during severe weather. It's a perfect storm. This entire area is, quite frankly, built for water intrusion. So when that water inevitably finds its way inside, what exactly are we dealing with? That brings us to Section 2, the anatomy of water damage. You really got to know your enemy here. Because look, not all flooding is created equal, right? Professionals actually break water down into 3 strict categories of contamination. Category 1 is your clean water. Think like a sudden burst supply line. Then you've got Category 2, which is gray water. This has some contamination, maybe a malfunctioning dishwasher backing up. But Category 3, oh man, that's black water. Driven by sewage backups or raw river floodwater, it is absolutely teeming with dangerous bacteria. The huge takeaway I want you to remember is the night and day difference in how these have to be handled. Category 1, clean water, gets treated with standard rapid extraction and drying. But Category 3, black water, no way. That demands rigorous, specialized hazardous cleanup, full protective safety gear, and complete sanitization. You literally cannot just mop up Category 3. You are essentially dealing with a hazmat situation. Now, knowing your water type is just step 1. The real stress test is Section 3, the critical 48-hour window. This is the ticking clock that starts the absolute second water invades your property. I cannot stress this enough. Water damage is a literal race against the clock. Minute 0 is when the intrusion happens. You have exactly 60 minutes to hit that ideal emergency response time. Why? Because right around that 24 to 48-hour mark, aggressive mold growth kicks in. And even if you mitigate it quickly, you're still looking at a solid 3 to 5 full days just for the professional drying to finish up. Let's zoom in on that middle window for a second. Building materials like drywall act exactly like a giant sponge. Without immediate intervention, they rapidly wick moisture upward, pulling it right out of the puddles and secretly up into your walls. Give it 24 to 48 hours and mold aggressively takes over. What could have been a simple extraction suddenly blows up into a massive remediation project. So, 60 minutes. That's the magic number. That is exactly why professional mitigation teams guarantee a rapid response time of an hour or less. Shutting down that water source and pulling it out within that first hour is pretty much the only reliable way to freeze that timeline and halt the destruction. Okay, so the pros arrive on the scene. How do they actually fix it? Let's dive into Section 4, the science of restoration, and look at how we reverse the damage. It's not just throwing down a couple of box fans, folks. There are strict, sequential steps to rescuing a property. Step 1 is a rigorous emergency assessment and moisture mapping. Step 2, heavy-duty water extraction using trick-mounted equipment. Step 3, structural drying with industrial dehumidifiers. And finally, Step 4, that all-important final moisture verification. Now, Step 1 is where the really cool tech comes in, specifically thermal imaging. This is an advanced camera technology that detects tiny temperature variations. It's a total game changer because it allows technicians to literally see the hidden moisture trapped deep inside walls, under your floors, and inside structural cavities. Basically, it finds the sneaky threats that a visual inspection completely misses. And honestly, this is exactly why DIY cleanups usually end in disaster. We naturally focus on the visible damage, right? We mop up the puddles, towel off the wet carpets, and think we're totally safe. But out of sight does not mean out of danger. That hidden moisture, the stuff wicked up inside the drywall and saturated into the subfloors, will just quietly rot the structure of your home from the inside out. So if you want to be sure real science is actually being applied, you only need to look for one acronym, IICRC. That is the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. If your team is IICRC certified, you know for a fact they're following rigorous, established industry standards for detecting and drying moisture, instead of just guessing. Let's look at that science in action. We all know a typical North Kansas City summer feels like walking through soup, right? The ambient humidity is usually way over 60%. Well, these industrial machines have to force the relative humidity inside your flooded room down to a bone-dry 30 to 40%. It's literally the only way to physically pull that trapped moisture out of the saturated building materials and into the air. And capturing all of that precise scientific data perfectly sets up our final section, Section 5, Navigating Insurance and Recovery, where we talk about reclaiming your property. Look, when you're dealing with insurance, proof is absolutely everything. You need daily moisture logs, clear photographic evidence of the damage, exact logs showing where drying equipment was placed, and ideally third-party moisture verification. Having this meticulous, day-by-day documentation completely removes the guesswork for the insurance adjuster, and that means a much faster approval and a faster payout for your claim. But remember the golden rule of this whole process. The drying equipment is never, ever removed until moisture meters definitively verify that the affected materials perfectly match the normal moisture content of unaffected areas. Rushing this final step is a huge mistake. Leave even a tiny fraction of moisture behind, and you are basically guaranteeing structural decay, and mold will pop up weeks after the crew leaves. So looking at this ticking timeline and the intense science of restoration, it leaves us with one really critical question. Is your property actually prepared for the next Missouri River swell or the next brutal winter freeze? Because knowing exactly what to do in those first 60 minutes is the entire key to surviving a crisis. Take a real look at your risks, get a plan together, and be ready way before that water ever starts rising. Thanks for hanging out and unpacking this explainer with me today.